All right, so we're diving into Love in the Time of Cholera this time. It's quite a story, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those books that just stays with you.
Yeah, and there are just so many layers to unpack. We'll be focusing on excerpts and passages from the book itself, so
Wonderful.
we'll really be able to get into the nitty-gritty of the story. And for listeners who, maybe haven't read it recently
Hmm.
or ever, this deep dive will give you a great taste of Marquez's incredible storytelling.
Absolutely. And even if you have read it, I think you'll find something new to discover. Because, with Marquez, there's always something hidden beneath the surface.
Always. Okay, so to set the stage,
Hmm.
we're dealing with a story of obsessive love, societal pressures in a very specific time and place, and a city that seems to be haunted not just by cholera, but by ghosts of the past.
Very well put. And I think what makes this book so compelling is how Marquez intertwines the personal and the political, the intimate and the societal. We'll see how those forces really shape the characters and their choices.
Okay, so let's start with Dr. Juvenal Urbino. This guy's like the epitome of order and respectability. A
Hmm.
respected physician devoted to modernizing the city and fighting cholera.
A true man of science and progress.
Right. But then, out of the blue, he falls from a mango tree chasing after a parrot. And that's it.
Talk about irony.
Right. A doctor dying such a ridiculous death. It's such an unexpected end. What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's more than just an accident. Dr. Urbino represents control,
Hmm.
order. His death, this way, it kind of suggests that even the most carefully constructed lives are vulnerable to chaos, to fate.
Yeah, it's like a reminder that we're all just hanging by a thread, no matter how much we try to control things.
Precisely.
And as if that wasn't enough, right before he dies, he gets this letter from his friend Jeremiah de Saint-Maur, a photographer who committed suicide. But this isn't your typical suicide note. It reveals a dark secret.
A secret that rocks the very foundations of their society.
Right. Saint-Maur was a fugitive convicted of a horrifying crime. Even cannibalism. It's like a bomb dropped into the heart of this seemingly perfect world that Dr. Urbino represents.
Exactly. It shatters that illusion of stability, of order, and it really foreshadows the way things are going to unravel, the way the past will intrude on the present.
So we've got this backdrop of cholera, this sense of lurking danger, and now this shocking revelation about Saint-Amour. It's all very unsettling.
It is. And it's against this backdrop that we meet the woman at the center of it all, Fermina Daza, Dr. Urbino's wife, and of course the object of Florentino Ariza's lifelong obsession.
Yeah, she's quite a character. I mean, she initially rejects Florentino, chooses a life of security and social standing with Dr. Urbino, which, makes sense in that context.
Of course, societal pressures were incredibly strong, especially for a woman of her standing.
Right. But then after her husband's death, her grief takes this unexpected turn. She's not finding comfort in her memories of Dr. Urbino. Instead, she...
She's consumed by thoughts of Florentino.
Yeah. It's like losing her husband unlocked this hidden part of her heart, this part that's still clinging to her youthful passion, to the road not taken.
It's a powerful testament to the enduring power of first love, don't you think? And the complexities of memory. Fermina is forced to confront those choices she made and the life she might have lived.
I mean, imagine that, realizing that you've spent more time thinking about a man you haven't seen in decades than about your husband of, what was it, almost 50 years.
It's a profound realization, and a bit unsettling, perhaps. It makes you wonder about the nature of love and the passage of time.
For sure. Okay, so now let's talk about Florentino Ariza, our lovesick Romeo, waiting decades for his Juliet. He writes her countless letters, serenades her. He even vows to salvage a sunken galleon's treasure for her.
Oh, Florentino. His grand romantic gestures. It's almost comical, isn't it?
Almost, but also kind of heartbreaking. I mean, he goes through so much rejection and pain for love. Fermina and her father reject him. He's even imprisoned for a while because he's mistaken for a spy.
His devotion borders on obsession, wouldn't you say? He creates this idealized image of Fermina in his mind, elevates her to this almost mythical status, and his persistence, despite all the setbacks, it really makes you question what love is, where the line is between devotion and delusion.
Yeah, it's like he can't even live his own life because he's so fixated on this image of Fermina he's created.
That's very astute. And even though he remains devoted to her in his heart, he has all these affairs with other women. He's seeking solace, distraction, I suppose.
But none of them can really replace Fermina, can they?
No, he even turns down the advances of a maid, someone who clearly desires him. But his heart, it's tethered to Fermina. It's like he's searching for pieces of her in these other women.
Trying to piece together an image of her, an image that only exists in his mind.
Exactly.
And as he ages, we see him trying to hold on to his youth. He's fighting baldness with all sorts of remedies, eventually resorting to a wig, and he gets dentures. He even has a special set for Sundays and holidays.
Oh, Florentino and his vanity. It's both heartbreaking and hilarious, but it's also so human, isn't it?
Yeah, that desire to cling to youth, especially when you're in love. And then Marquez throws in this scene where his uncle, Leo XII, catches him in a compromising position and compares him to his father.
Oh, that scene. Cure Marquez. He's a master of blending humor and pathos.
Absolutely. But even with all these attempts to hold back time marches on. And then something happens that gives Florentino a renewed sense of hope. He sees Fermina, now an older woman, at a movie theater. It's like this jolt of electricity for him.
A reawakening. It's a pivotal moment. This chance encounter makes him believe that maybe, just maybe, he still has time, a second chance.
And he throws himself into preparing for this potential reunion. He learns to type so his letters will be more impressive. It's like he's been given this new lease on life.
He's determined to win her over, finally.
And he even ends up at a luncheon where he runs into Dr. Urbino. Can you imagine that awkwardness?
Oh, it's more than just awkward. There's this strange connection between them, these two men who love the same woman.
It's like they're rivals, but also bonded in a way.
Exactly. It adds this whole other layer to the story. And then, just as he's feeling optimistic, Florentino takes a tumble down the stairs. It's almost symbolic, isn't it?
Yeah, like foreshadowing the challenges he's going to face. Okay, so we've got Dr. Urbino gone, Fermina wrestling with her past, and Florentino, well, he's rekindled his hopes. Now let's go back to Fermina. After her husband's death, she goes through this purging process. She gets rid of his belongings, even burns some of them.
It's a powerful way of letting go. But it's also about confronting her own past, her choices. Remember, she chose security and social standing over passion. Now all those old feelings are resurfacing.
Yeah, and then she receives a letter from Florentino. This letter, perfectly typed after weeks of practice, it's more than just words on a page. It's
a symbol of his enduring love, a love that has survived decades of separation.
And so her initial reaction, her disgust, it starts to give way to a flicker of interest. She starts to see Florentino in a new light.
It's the beginning of a shift in their dynamic. And it all leads to their encounter at the movie theater and ultimately their journey up the Magdalena River. But that's a story for part 2 of our deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive into Love in the Time of Cholera. We left off with Florentino and Fermina at a crossroads. Decades of separation, and now
they're both widows, and they find themselves drawn back to each other. It's like all that pent-up longing, all those years of waiting.
It's finally coming to a head.
Exactly. And where do they choose to navigate this rekindled connection? On a riverboat.
Sailing up the Magdalena River.
Right. Under the guise of a cholera quarantine. Talk about a dramatic setting.
It's certainly not your typical romantic getaway, but that isolation, it's crucial. By raising that yellow quarantine flag, they're basically rejecting all the societal expectations, you know?
Yeah, like they're creating their own little world, a world where time and social pressures don't matter.
Precisely. They're free to redefine their relationship on their own terms.
Okay, but let's talk about the river itself. I mean, it's not just a backdrop, is it?
Not at all. The Magdalena River, it was once this majestic symbol of life and vitality, but now
it's a shadow of its former self.
Exactly. Ravaged by deforestation, carrying the stench of death. It's like a mirror of the passage of time, reflecting the changes that have taken place in the world and within the characters themselves.
So the river becomes a metaphor for their own journey.
Yeah.
Their attempt to navigate aging and rekindle this love that's been dormant for so long.
Yes, and as they journey further upriver, the river's condition deteriorates. It gets narrower, muddier. The landscape is increasingly barren.
Like the river is dying.
Yes. And it reflects that sense of loss and decay that pervades their lives.
It's a pretty stark reminder that time waits for no one. Not even for a love as persistent as Florentino's. So how do they navigate this new chapter, this unexpected intimacy against this backdrop of decay?
At first, there's a lot of awkwardness, embarrassment. You know, they're both older now, carrying the weight of years, experiences, past choices.
It's not like they're those love-struck teenagers anymore.
Right. But slowly, a connection emerges.
It's not just about rekindling that youthful romance, though, is it?
No. It goes much deeper. They've both lived full lives, experienced love and loss in different ways. And now, on this journey, they're stripping away those layers, those past experiences.
They're meeting each other anew.
Exactly. Rediscovering each other in the context of their lives now, with all their complexities and imperfections.
It makes you wonder if their isolation, this separation from the world, is actually what allows them to be truly vulnerable with each other.
That's a really interesting point. Away from societal pressures, from the judgment of others, they can shed those roles they've played for so many years.
Embrace their true selves.
Yes. But before they embark on this river voyage, we see Fermina dealing with the loss of her husband. She goes through this intense purging process, getting rid of his belongings, even burning some of them.
Like she's trying to erase his presence.
It's a way of confronting her grief, but also her past choices. Remember, she chose Dr. Urbino over Florentino. Stability, social standing over passion. Now she's forced to grapple with those decisions, with the life she might have lived if
If she'd followed her heart.
Exactly. So her grief is tangled up with regret, with this haunting sense of what if?
And in the midst of all this emotional turmoil, she receives that letter from Florentino, the one he painstakingly typed after weeks of practice.
That letter is more than just a message. It's a testament to his enduring love, a love that has spanned decades, withstood countless trials.
And it reawakened something in her.
Yes, it sparks a curiosity, a desire to reconnect with this man who has loved her so steadfastly for so long. And that curiosity, that desire, it ultimately leads to their encounter at the movie theater, a chance meeting that reignites a flame that seemed extinguished.
We talked earlier about how Florentino tries to fight the effects of aging with the wigs, the dentures. Does Marquez depict Fermina's aging process in a similar way?
He does. He doesn't shy away from the realities of aging. Even for a woman like Fermina, we see her grapple with the loss of her youthful beauty, her hair turning gray, her body changing.
But it's not portrayed as something negative, is it?
No, it's about something deeper. It's about coming to terms with the passage of time, the inevitability of change. And in a way, it's liberating. Fermina is no longer bound by societal expectations of beauty and youth. She's free to embrace the woman she's become, with all her wisdom and experience.
You mentioned liberation, and it makes me think about Florentino and his affairs, his inability to fully commit to anyone else. It's like he's trapped by his love for Fermina.
That's a great observation. His affairs, while numerous, are never truly fulfilling. They're driven by a longing for connection, a way to fill the void left by Fermina's absence.
But they just end up reinforcing his love for her.
Exactly. He's looking for those qualities that drew him to Fermina in the first place, but he can never truly find them in anyone else.
So it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy. He's so convinced that no one can compare to Fermina that he sabotages his own relationships.
Fascinating way to put it. His obsession with Fermina becomes a prison of his own making, a barrier to true intimacy with anyone else.
It's both romantic and tragic. He's so devoted to this idealized image of her that he misses out on the potential for real connection with other women. But now, after all these years, they're back in each other's lives. What happens as they continue up the river?
The river keeps playing this crucial role, serving as a conduit for their shared past, for the memories and emotions that come up as they travel deeper into the country. And amidst that backdrop of decay, those reminders of time passing, moments of tenderness emerge. They share meals, they dance. Florentino serenades Fermina with a borrowed violin. He plays the waltz of the crowned goddess.
They're rediscovering those shared moments of joy, of connection. But now it's tinged with this awareness of all that's happened, all that time that has passed.
Exactly. There's a depth to their interactions now, a maturity that wasn't there before. They're not just reliving the past. They're creating something new.
Something built on the foundation of their shared history, but shaped by the people they've become. It makes you think about how love can change, take on different forms as we age. So we're back, diving deeper into love in the time of cholera. Last we left off, Florentino and Fermina were sailing up the Magdalena, and things were getting pretty intense.
They were indeed, journeying further and further into the heart of the country. And the river, as we discussed, that river is so much more than just setting.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a character in itself, changing and evolving, along with Florentino and Fermina.
Precisely. Remember how we talked about it? Starting out wide, majestic, full of life.
Yeah, and then as they travel further, it gets narrower, almost claustrophobic.
Yes, choked with debris, the landscape around them becoming more and more barren.
A very visual representation of the passage of time and, that sense of inevitable decline.
Exactly. But even amidst that decay, those reminders of mortality, well, we start to see these glimmers of hope, these moments of rekindled intimacy between them.
Yeah, it's like they're both trying to recapture some of those youthful feelings,
Hmm.
the passion, the tenderness, but now it's all so much more complex.
Of course, because now it's layered with all their experience, with a deeper understanding of themselves and each other.
There's a maturity to their connection now that wasn't there before.
Absolutely. They're not just trying to relive the past, they're creating something new, something more profound. And what about the cholera? We can't forget about the cholera.
Right, they've been sailing under that quarantine flag, isolating themselves from the world. But as their journey progresses, the threat of the disease seems to kind of fade into the background.
It's interesting, isn't it? It almost becomes irrelevant as their connection deepens.
Yeah, like their love is its own quarantine, shielding them from the dangers of the outside world.
A beautiful way to put it. And that brings us to the ending. An ending that's both ambiguous and incredibly powerful.
They decide to just keep going.
Indefinitely. They raise the quarantine flag once again, turn the boat around, and head back downriver.
They choose to stay in that self-imposed isolation, to embrace their love on their own terms, completely outside of society's expectations.
It's a bold statement, a rejection of societal norms, a declaration of their independence.
But is it a happy ending? I mean, are they really happy, or is it just a way to escape from reality?
That's the question Marquez leaves us with, isn't it? Is it a triumph or a tragedy? I think it's open to interpretation. Some might see it as a celebration of love's enduring power, its ability to defy time and convention.
And others might see it as a way of escaping the realities of aging and loss.
Precisely. And that's what makes this book so brilliant. It challenges us to think about the nature of love, the complexities of aging, the choices we make.
There's no easy answer.
No. Love in the Time of Cholera is a story that stays with you. It makes you think, it makes you feel, it makes you question.
And that's what we try to do here on the Deep Dive, right?
Absolutely. We delve into these complex stories, these fascinating works, and hopefully we spark some new ideas and insights for our listeners.
So I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into love in the time of cholera. Maybe it's given you a new perspective on the book, or maybe it's even inspired you to go back and read it again.
And I think we've all learned something about love, loss, and the enduring power of the human spirit along the way.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Deep Dive.